Aloha! Welcome to 3 Levels of Enlightenment. This is program 3.1, The Primary Fault of the Human Species. This is the first program at the 3rd level, sponsored by the United Galactic Federation of Planets. My name is Merlin, and I'll be your tour guide. We're coming to you from the Gilbert Ray Campground in Tucson Mountain County Park here in Tucson, Arizona. Standing behind me is my good friend Roy, and on my left is his partner Dale. Roy and Dale are giant saguaro cactuses, magnificent creations of God that are found in this part of the world. We're joined by other fascinating plants like prickly pear cactus, barrel cactus, jumping choyas, palo verdes, mesquite, and many other beautiful creations of nature. We also have coyotes, mountain lions, lynx, bobcats, deer, rabbits, snakes, quail, roadrunners, doves, pigeons, hummingbirds, and lots of other exotic wildlife throughout this park. I'd now like to explain why these programs are entitled The 3 Levels of Enlightenment. Our sponsors are sensitive to the feelings and beliefs of all of you. Our sponsors do not want to offend anyone, so as a precaution, the programs have been sorted out into 3 categories: levels 1, 2, and 3. Level 1 is for all audiences and is rated PG-13. No one should be offended by the information offered at this level, but parents are cautioned that this level may not be appropriate for young children. Level 2 is only for people who believe in angels and is rated R. Hello. We have a woodpecker up on top of Roy making noise. Level 2 is not for children and is not for adults who don't believe in angels. They might be offended, and we recommend they do not watch Level 2. Level 3, today's level, will definitely offend certain groups and is rated XXX. It is absolutely not for children, and it is likely not for some adults. The groups that will be offended include 1. People with a strong belief in religion, 2. People with a strong belief in science, and 3, people with a strong belief in our government's official explanations of events. Anyone in these groups should not watch. If you tune in after the program has started, though, after the level has first been announced, you'll still be able to identify the level being discussed in several ways. On the board behind me are the words level and number, corresponding to today's program. Level 3, number 1. The tray in front of me has a placard with the letters XXX. Today is a Level 3 program and it's XXX. Level 3 has the white shirt that I have on now. So please evaluate what levels might cause you to be offended, then watch accordingly. I'd once again like to remind everyone that this is a Level 3 program. Those of you that have a strong belief in religion, a strong belief in science, or a strong belief in our government's explanations and our politicians should not watch this program. I guarantee you will be offended. But for those of you that are courageous enough to continue watching, I congratulate you. You're going to hear things that are going to cause you to be angry, to be very angry, and it's a righteous anger. You deserve to be angry. But please don't take it out on the messenger. If you visit the Tucson movie studios across the road and go to the saloon, they have a piano on one side of the stage, and there's a great sign on the piano. It says, if you don't like the music, please don't shoot the piano player. Well, the same thing here. If you don't like what I'm going to tell you, don't get mad at me. You have a right to be angry. You have righteous anger, but take it out on those that deceived you. Take it out on the people that have lied and deceived us for all these centuries. So let's begin. What I'd like to do is to give you a test. I'm going to show you 2 different lists. Each list has 5 items, and at the end of my showing you these lists, I want you to tell me which list has more bad things on it. So let's start out. Let's say these 2 lists are my 2 hands. You guys can do this with your friends. This will help explain the primary fault of the human species. The first list has killing, destroying, stealing, lying, and wanting to steal. So let me write that down. Killing, destroying, stealing, lying, and wanting to steal, which another word that describes that is covet. Coveting. So that's our first list. Now our second list has killing, making passionate love, stealing, lying, and wanting to steal. Killing, making passionate love, stealing, lying, and wanting to steal. Let me put those up there. First one is killing, making passionate love, stealing, lying, and wanting to steal. Okay, there's your two lists. Which one has more bad things on it? Well, maybe we can all agree that 4 of the 5 items on both lists are the same and they're all bad. Killing is bad, stealing is bad, lying is bad, and wanting to steal is bad, coveting. So really the only thing we're talking about is this one, either destroying or making passionate love. Which one is worse? Well, am I crazy? This would seem to be pretty obvious. Destroying is worse. Making passionate love is wonderful. That's what life is all about. We're designed for sex. Well, believe it or not, this list, the one in red, is the second tablet. These are the original last 5 commandments from the 10 commandments. This was number 6, killing. This was number 7, destroying. 8, 9, and 10. The original word was adulterate. The word adulterate means to lessen in value. If you look this up in Webster's, it means to destroy something. If you adulterate something, it's no longer as much of value. And about 200 years after Moses, after he brought down those 2 tablets, a bunch of Hebrew men got together and decided they needed to do something. During the time of Moses and all the time before that, we had what was called a matriarchal society. Women were in charge, and the women decided who they wanted to have sex with. And back in those days, they had sex like all the time. In fact, it's been said that Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt, one time had sex with 100 men in one night. And back then, it was okay, because the whole idea was to have sex as recreation. It was for fun. And everybody was having it all the time. The single people, the married people, the old people, everybody was having sex. And it wasn't a problem. But a bunch of Hebrew men, sometime down the road after Moses, decided they wanted to know whose baby they were raising, whose kid it was. Because prior to that time, when a woman got pregnant, everybody rejoiced. It was wonderful. They were just glad she was pregnant. And whoever her partner was happy to raise it. They didn't care whose kid it was. But this time, 200 years after Moses, all of a sudden these Hebrew men decide, we want to be raising our kids. We want to make sure it's our blood that's in the kid that I'm raising. I don't want to raise anybody else's blood. So they did something awful. They did something absolutely blasphemous. They did something that is so outrageously bad that God is still steaming about it. And what they did was they made adulterate adultery. Now that was a brand new word, but what that meant was no sex outside of marriage. They effectively eliminated 99% of the sex that was going on in the society. So now young people couldn't have sex anymore, and they're the ones that need it the worst. All those of you that have been teenagers, remember those days? For the guys, it was like every 30 seconds. Couldn't avoid thinking about sex. Well, now they couldn't have sex till they got married. And then the married folks were stuck with each other, and if the husband didn't want it, nobody got it. So they essentially messed up our society. Things kind of like went to hell in a handbasket, and it was all for greed. The primary fault of the human species is greed. As we continue with this program, I'd once again like to warn everyone that this is a level 3 program, and if you're offended by this material, do not watch this program. It will make you have righteous anger, and you may not be able to deal with it. So continuing on this concept of greed, 2,000 years ago, there was a man on this planet who was very smart. His name was Jesus Christ, and he taught us a lot of things, but unfortunately, his teachings have been drastically altered. In 325 AD, there was a ruler whose name was Constantine, and he found out about all these people that were in prisons throughout the empire, and they were nuts. These guys allowed themselves to be fed to lions and to be slaughtered by gladiators. They had such a strong belief. Well, Constantine told these Christians, I'll let you guys free, and I'm going to make you the new religion of my empire, but we've got to change a few things. We have to make your religion self-supporting. We've got to get your followers to support you. And the best way to do it is to prey on one of the most powerful human emotions. That emotion is called fear. We've got to scare the daylights out of your followers and get them to give you money. So what we have to do is to add in something evil, something that will scare them. And the name of that evil thing is hell and Satan. Now, those of you that are strong believers in religion, I'm telling you now, do not watch this. You're not going to want to hear what I have to say. But those of you that want to continue, I congratulate you. Jesus did not teach Satan. Jesus did not teach the devil. That was made up. That was a fear factor. That was all about money. Jesus taught reincarnation. Jesus taught life after life after life. He did not teach anything about hell. You can't be reincarnated if you're burning in hell. Jesus could not have taught anything about hell. And they cleansed the Bible of all the references to reincarnation except for one. In the Bible, there's a story about Jesus and the disciples being out in the country, and they come across a blind man, a beggar, and he's been blind since birth. And the disciples ask him a question that, based on the teachings of Christianity, they shouldn't have asked. But in that time, this was a normal question. They asked Jesus, was this blind man born blind because of something his parents did? In other words, his parents offended God, so God gave them a blind baby? Or was it something he did? Under Christianity, when babies are born, they are free of sin. How can the disciples be asking Jesus if this baby was born blind because of something he did? Babies can't be born blind because of something they did, because Christianity says they're born free of sin. What the disciples are asking is, did he do something in a past life, in a previous life, that then came forward into this life, something we call karma or debt, and he had to be born into this life blind in order to pay for what he had done in a past life. The disciples are talking about reincarnation. That is the one example in the Bible they didn't get out. That's one of the few that snuck through. And in that time, 2,000 years ago, the Jews believed in reincarnation. And in our world today, everyone that's put under hypnosis has memories of past lives. We all remember past lives once we're hypnotized. Now, the reason we don't remember it in our conscious minds is because we get all confused. If you started remembering past lives and you wanted to remember something that happened like yesterday, you'd have to say, was that yesterday or was that 100 years ago? We'd be all confused. So in our lives today, in our conscious bodies, our conscious selves, we don't remember those past lives. But when we're hypnotized, when we're under hypnosis, our subconscious comes out and it remembers all these lives. Well, the concept is you can't be reborn to live another life if you're burning in hell. Not possible. So Jesus could not have taught anything about hell. And at the same time, Satan, the devil, are tied to hell. There can be no Satan or hell. There can be no Satan or devil. Now there is a Lucifer, and this is a hard one. And I warn you again, if you're starting to steam, turn it off. But there is such a thing as fallen angels, and I'll get into that much more in another program. But Lucifer was a very highly regarded angel by God, and Lucifer volunteered to work with the fallen angels for the last few thousand years. And he did a brilliant job of working with these fallen angels. But Lucifer is not a bad guy, and the fallen angels are not bad guys. They're doing God's work. The whole concept of life on this planet, in this world, on this physical plane, is to experience everything you possibly can. Not just the good, but also the bad. We come down here to experience everything, and we need challenges. We're not sent down to be couch potatoes. You're supposed to have bad things happen to you, and it's okay, because it's all about overcoming the bad. But back to Constantine, he has to have something to scare people. He wants his new religion, this thing called Christianity, to be self-supporting. So he tells all these Christians, you got to throw away all the stuff about reincarnation, and now we got to bring in the devil. And the concept is, you got to give us a certain amount of your money while you're alive, and give us everything when you die, and if you don't, you're going to burn in hell. And that's how they got their funding. But it was all about greed. Once again, I need to warn you folks, anybody with a strong belief in a religion, do not watch this. I'm going to tell you something else that's going to make you absolutely furious. This goes against all the teachings and everything you've been told if you've been active in religion. Not only did Constantine want to introduce the devil and Satan in order to scare people, but he also wanted to disenfranchise half of the human race. During the time of Jesus, women were the equals to men. It's more than likely that Jesus didn't have just 12 apostles, he had 24 apostles. He had teams of men and women who went out together and worked with the masses. So it wasn't just the 12 disciples, it was 24 disciples. Women were equals. But Constantine wanted to make women the bad guys, and he introduced something called sin. Now, who committed the original sin? Well, all those of you that have been to church, had church training, are going to tell me Eve committed the original sin. She took the apple and gave it to Adam. The serpent, the devil, tempted her, and she committed the original sin. No. Unfortunately, Constantine wanted women to become second-class citizens. And that was totally in opposition to what Jesus taught. If you folks want to look this one up, there's a word called Corban. You can find it in Wikipedia and in the dictionary. And it talks about a man giving all of his assets to the church upon his death. And Jesus' complaint was, if you have parents that are needy, that money should be going to your parents, not to the church. But in later years, during Christianity, under Constantine, that's what they expected. When a man died, all of his assets went to the church, and his wife and his children became homeless, became destitute. And in the years following Constantine, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of women were executed during the Inquisition because the women knew the true teachings of Jesus. They weren't to become second-class citizens. When the man died, they should get his estate. But in those years, all of his estate went to the church, and if the woman complained, she had to go before the Inquisition and was then executed for complaining. They called her the bride of the devil. Well, women are not supposed to be the bad guys. And the most horrific part of the story is that Jesus not only taught a Lord's Prayer to the Father, our Father which art in heaven, he taught a Lord's Prayer to our mother. It goes, Our Mother which art upon earth, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in us as it is in thee. As thou sendest every day thy angels, send them to me also. Forgive us our errors as we atone all our errors against thee. Lead us not into illness, but deliver us from all evil. For thine is the earth, the body, and the health. Amen. That prayer has the same number of lines, the same cadence, the same sound as Our Father which art in heaven, but it's to our mother which art upon earth. And Jesus taught that. Jesus taught a Lord's Prayer to a mother that was as important as the prayer to the Father. But Constantine said, no, women have to be the bad guys. We're going to make women second-class citizens. We're going to make them homeless when the man dies, and we're going to take all the money. No, that was absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. Well, let's make a list so far of all the ways we've been deceived. The first one was the corrupted commandment. Number 7. The next one was the devil and hell. These are all deceptions. There is no such thing as adultery. There is no such thing as the devil or hell. The next one is Lord's Prayer. Whoa. We're getting responses from the folks upstairs. Lord's Prayer number 2. We have a drastic imbalance. If you're praying just to one Lord when you're supposed to be praying to 2 Lords, don't you think maybe things have gotten screwed up? Maybe that's why we have all these wars, why we have all these people in prison, why we have all this poverty and destitution throughout our planet. We are supposed to be praying to 2 Lords, to a mother as well as a father. And then the other deception is that women are second-class citizens. No, they're equals to men. They always have been. Primary fault of the human species, greed, began to show up in kings. For many centuries, kings had a divine right. God entrusted kings with a right to rule their people. And there were many good kings. And there was a time when kings were wise and did the right thing. But come the 17th century, they got greedy. And I'm sure you guys have all heard the story about let them eat cake. France had 2 very greedy monarchs, Marie Antoinette and her husband. And when the people of France, people of Paris, were starving to death, and she's living in the lap of luxury with this magnificent palace and all this food, her response to their starving was, let them eat cake. No, that's not a kind and generous king, a monarch. That's called greed. That's the primary fault of the human species. So all of a sudden, something new appears on the horizon called democracy. Instead of having kings that were greedy, all of a sudden, a new concept comes along where it becomes one man, one vote. And each person is responsible and accountable. And America is created. And then all the other countries of the world become democracies. It was good for about 140 years, until the beginning of the last century, in the 1910s and 1920s. Unfortunately, the American system became corrupted. And the way it was corrupted was when they created the Corporation Act. As soon as they created corporations, the whole idea of one man, one vote, and personal responsibility, personal accountability, went right out the window. Because corporations have the same rights as an individual, but they're not responsible and they're not accountable. Corporations can kill people. Corporations can steal. Corporations can lie. Corporations can do all those bad things I showed you on that other chart, and they get away with it. The executives of the corporations can do all kinds of terrible things, and they're not accountable. Look what happened when the stock market collapsed. All those investment bankers on Wall Street threatened to shut down the entire world economy unless the U.S. government dumped trillions of dollars into their coffers to keep them going, which then allowed them to survive. But then last winter, they rewarded themselves with hundreds of millions of dollars in bonuses. Well, that's what corporations can do. They can blackmail governments. And it's all about greed. It all comes down to money. And one of the saddest things is that it's getting worse. In 2002, Fortune magazine ran an article about you bought, they sold, and in this article, they talk about hundreds of greedy executives since 1999 at America's worst performing companies who have sold $66 billion worth of stock and at the same time told their investors, buy. And this article has all these executives that have made tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars off of their companies and stole the money from the investors. Well, this was in 2002. Today, we have 400 people in the United States that have more personal wealth than half of all the rest of us. This country has 300 million people. Half of 300 million is 150 million. There are 400 people that have more wealth than those 150 million. It's gotten worse. In 2002, it was just these guys. Today, there's many more, and they're controlling all the funds, all the money. Well, it's all greed. Greed is totally out of control, and it's the primary fault of the human species. So at this point, I'd like to wish you all aloha and a hui ho. Until next time.